Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Wellbeing with Seamus. I'm delighted that you're able to tune in to this episode 12 this afternoon of Wellbeing with Seamus, and it is the final episode of Series 1. And I thought to myself that I'd go out on a high, on a real high, sitting down with an amazing friend of mine, an amazing human being who has his own amazing story to tell, and he not only tells the tale, but he's written it down as well. And we're going to share some thoughts on that today and have a discussion around his book, The Buddhist CEO. If you've not already subscribed, and if you've not already followed me, please do so, and the YouTube links and the Spotify links will be available. But and please comment and on these episodes. I'm always nice and I'm always great to get comments and feedback. So if you listen, comment and subscribe and follow me in the usual places, both on YouTube and Spotify. But without further ado, you don't want to miss this. You don't want to miss this episode today, because I have with me today an amazing human being. As I say, he's a father, he's a CEO, he's a chairman, he's a Buddhist, he's a meditator, an all amazing individual. I'd like to welcome to episode 12, the final series 1 today, Thane Lawrie, who originates all the way from Aberdeenshire in Scotland. Thane, you're very welcome to Wellbeing with Seamus this afternoon, and thanks for coming on.
Hi Seamus, it's a real pleasure to be on your show. I'm looking forward to our conversations, and I thank you for that very kind introduction. I just hope I can live up to it.
You absolutely can, Thane. I know you can, and I'm not putting you under any pressure at all. Thane, it's great to have you on board, and I suppose just initially, we've been friends now for nearly a little over a year and a half, something like that.
Yeah,
wow.
Must be.
Yeah, I connected with you just before the publishing of your new book, didn't I? Or shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
Wow. So, and again, the power of LinkedIn, ladies and gentlemen, the power of LinkedIn brings people together. And not only did we connect, but I'm delighted to say I'm probably the furthest away visitor to the Haven in Stonehaven, right? And my wonderful meditation group on a Thursday night that I can't wait to be part of. Again, next Thursday when I'm up in Stonehaven, and we'll speak about that in due course. But Thane, for those who don't know you, for those of you who don't know who you are, please, tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and your background and what brings you to Wellbeing with Seamus this afternoon.
Well, thank you. I suppose working back, you and I met, as you say, on LinkedIn. Primarily, I suppose you were interested in my book, and I was interested in what you were doing too around well-being. I wrote a book called The Buddhist CEO, which tells a story about a man, not necessarily me, although there's a lot of me in there, who lives a deeply spiritual life, or he tries to live a deeply spiritual life. He's committed to Buddhism, and he's married, he's got children. But it's all the pressures that come with that, having to house the kids and, take them on holidays and feed the kids, etc. So what he finds is, ironically, with his Buddhist practice, which he takes very seriously, he tries to work diligently and do things well. He's not perfect by any means, but he tries to do things well. And he gets promoted, and before he knows it, he gets a chance to become a CEO suddenly and unexpectedly. And he's not sure if he'll take the job on or not. He just wonders if it fits with his Buddhist life, and not trying to aspire to anything too great, to just trying to live his life. But anyway, he resolves to take the job and to lead like a Buddhist CEO, and to apply compassion, fairness, to where he works, and to see how that would affect a company. And it eventually thrives. And on the face of it, he is successful. recognised nationally, UK nationally, for his achievements. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of doubts in his mind, and the pressures get to him, and he has to deal with some really situations he finds very difficult to kind of tear him apart a little bit. And the books are oscillates between the workplace and him going on retreats to the monastery where he's gone for many, many years, as I have actually in my own life, a monastery in Northumberland called Throstle Hole. He goes there for kind of respite from his CEO journeys, and ultimately he becomes unwell, actually, as a result of stress. So that's the book. Before that, I was a CEO myself. I was a CEO for 7 years, a fantastic organisation called SCARF. I'm still the vice chairman there, although I'm no longer the CEO. But 6 of the 7 years I was in charge, we were actually placed in the Sunday Times top 100 companies to work for in the UK, won a range of local awards for best employee engagement, the Northern Star Business Awards, won the Press and Journal, which is the big newspaper in Northern Scotland, the Gold Awards, or Employee of the Year 2007, Employer of the Year 2017, one other award. So it's kind of a recognition, I like to think, of the kind of workplace culture of work that I led on and undertook to try and create a workplace that was, well, the world class was the word we used, but what it treated people well. Mm. And before that, I've been a Buddhist for 25 years, and it's something that's been very important to me for a long, long time. As I have this relationship with Throstle Hole, a monastery in Northumberland. I'm going there in a week's time, and I was lucky enough to spend 6 weeks there this year. It's the only time I've ever managed to get that long, but I'll go in there. So living with the monks has always been quite special to me, and learning from their how they view the world.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So you've had a range of experiences then. And you, in some ways, you've had an amazing life experience, and right at the very heart of that has been your Buddhist belief and your Buddhist philosophy. Can you explain? I know there are different strands of Buddhism, and I know there are different elements within the circle of Buddhism that people follow. What is the form of Buddhist practice that you follow yourself, and how does that enable you to be the best person that you can be? How do you present yourself on a daily basis?
Well, there are different forms of Buddhism, but the type of Buddhism I follow is known as Soto Zen, which is, I suppose, really a Japanese form of Buddhism. You follow it right back to the historic Buddha, India, then China became Chan. Chan then went to Japan in the 12th century, became Soto Zen, and it came to the West in the 20th century. As you mentioned, I run a Buddhist group. Something I do is a volunteer on a Thursday night at the Haven, which you visit occasionally, which is always nice, and look forward to seeing you next week. But because I run that, I meet new people every week, or every few weeks, somebody new comes along. I think the best way to explain it very quickly, or fairly quickly, is the man who was seen as the founder of the Soto Zen tradition, a man called Dogen, Dogen. And he was in Japan, and he felt that the Buddhist teachers there weren't quite cutting it, really. He felt there was more. He heard about these great monasteries in China. He went across there because no little undertaking in the 12th century. So he went across to China. Cut a very long story short, he was there for 5 years, and he found this monastery. When he walked into the monastery, he realized there was something different about this place very quickly. And the kind of things that struck him that were different was, in the kitchen, he realized that all the senior monks, or some of them, were working in the kitchen. Whereas back in Japan, it was seen as a lowly job, nothing hired help. Here was the sort of main players in the organization were actually getting their sleeves rolled up. And he was struck by the care that they took in terms of trying to make the food nice for the community, adding herbs and cream and all sorts of things to make it nice. And he was also struck by how they cared for the utensils, cleaned the pots and pans, kept the place tidy. And he thought this kind of atmosphere flowed out into the monastery. from the kitchen. So they looked after their statues in the same way, they mended their clothes in the same way, they looked after the gardens, the building in the same way. You thought, wow, what's all this based on? So it was basically based on a type of meditation called Zazen, where the monks would do it in the morning and do it throughout the day. It's a type of meditation I try and do as well. And he felt this type of meditation just seemed to have, I thought it was quite simple, have this effect. So when people were in the kitchen working or working together, allowed them to have a sort of harmonious approach to life. And very much the Soto Zen view is that a more enlightened life isn't to be found in the future, isn't to be found in some perfect place or a mountain top. It's to be found here and now in life, right now, in the workplace. You know, get up in the middle of the night with your kids when you're unwell. You've got a relative that's unwell. A more enlightened life's there. And I heard somebody describe it once as the sort of Soto Zen practice is ordinary people doing ordinary things in extraordinary ways. And so how I present myself in daily life, I hope, and I'm in no means am I perfect at all, I wouldn't even claim that, is just to try and see if I can find a more enlightened life in everyday life, the hassles, the ups and downs, just to being present to our life. Certainly the Buddhist view is we're often in the past, oh, if only somebody hadn't said that, or that hadn't happened, or we're in the future. Where am I going tonight? What's happening? We're very rarely here. I'm talking to you. Am I fully here, present, talking to you? So that's the kind of approach I take to the world. And that story kind of, yeah, I find it quite motivates me. It just really rung a chord with me the first time I heard this about this practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've experienced the practice myself, and unusually, it's a practice that allows people to keep their eyes open rather than their eyes shut, and you focus on the present awareness rather than, and I know myself as an apprentice meditator how difficult it is to focus on the present, because like you say, your mind takes you back to what's on the TV tonight, to takes you back to what happened yesterday, and I suppose in terms of your practice, how do you steer between those two parallels? How how do you keep yourself present when all the demands are pressing in upon you? Like you say, either be you're supporting your family, you're supporting your work, you're creating a livelihood. How do you keep it's one of the questions I've always wanted to ask is and you're right, enlightenment or present awareness is found in the ordinary things of life, right?
Yeah.
You don't need a church or a temple or it could be in the garden, it could be on the street, it could be in your car. How do you in terms of your practice maintain that present awareness on a daily basis there?
Yeah. It's a question that often comes up, and there's not an exact answer, but I will give you some hinters. That I think one of the things that are unfortunate that people get put off meditation, certainly people who come to the group on Thursday nights, and hear this a lot, is they're trying to clear their mind, and then very quickly they get frustrated in meditation because they can't clear their mind. Generally, the Soto Zen approach, as you say, sitting in meditation with eyes open, is not to try and force them, and have a acceptance is a big thing. Accept the situation that we're in. Don't try and create an ideal practice or an idealistic vision. So it's very easy to fall into, well, I'm a great meditator, or I'm trying to meditate perfectly. I'm going to try and live mindfully all day. Whereas in reality, minds just think, just like hearts just beat. It's kind of what they do. And it's very difficult to stop it, actually. Even the monks I know well, who've been in a monastery for many decades, say their minds still sort of tick away when they're meditating. That's not depressing to me. It can sound quite defeatist. What they say is it's how you relate to that is important rather than trying to silence it. When our type of meditation, we keep the eyes open, we face the wall, we just sit and we just look at the wall, we just try and be present, as you say.
Yeah.
Maybe 20, 30 seconds in, you start thinking about something. It's then about not getting annoyed. It's about compassionately bringing yourself back to the moment. That might happen 100, 150, 200 times during a 20-minute meditation. There's just something about this letting things go. This is what Dogen found in that monastery. That sounds so easy, but it's not easy to do. We're so used to being annoyed with ourselves and getting angry with ourselves. I know a lot of monks have said to me, it's easy to be compassionate to other people, but it's harder to be compassionate to yourself. Your mind starts thinking, bring yourself back. And if you really sort of get into this, some of these monks talk about practice is good for nothing, which may be a bit hard for some people to hear, but by that they mean,
Yeah.
don't sit up, just don't even have any expectations of it. Just, I suppose you've got to do it a few times to sort of trust it and feel there's something in that. And then just do the practice as best you can. Without any expectations of getting better or being worse or being the same. Just let it happen. And I think if you can let go of these expectations or keep letting go of them, because they do keep coming, but how you should be doing it, how you should be living, just try and let go of that and just try and be present and be comfortable with your imperfections and just be comfortable with the fact you're trying.
Yeah. And you know what I love and what I read through the chapters of your book is that when you do deliberately your practice every day, I love the fact that you dedicate, your Zendo and you dedicate your session to, something that maybe happened in that day, or relieving suffering for somebody, or being aware of somebody that might be struggling and working accordingly. Is that something that's important in terms of the practice as well?
Yeah, I think it is important. It's maybe not central to it, but I think it's important because developing compassion is a lifetime's work. You don't just become compassionate overnight. And I think in the world it's busy, we're tired, we've got all sorts of things to do, and having some sort of all of these training techniques are ways of bringing us back to ourselves, to our true home. We sometimes talk about it. It's enlightened to a life that's here now, not in the future. And I think just sometimes simply, but when I meditate, maybe we offer incense or a candle to start. If you do at the end of the meditation, you can offer the merits of the meditation to, I don't know, an ill relative or a friend, or even somebody you maybe don't go on with, or there's been a difficult
Yeah.
conversation with. Just again, you maybe somewhere in your mind you don't feel like that, but just somehow internally it can help to generate a more compassionate sort of outlook in the world. Just help generate that in yourselves. And who knows, on some level, it maybe even goes out into the world and does some good as well. But certainly internally, it does some good, or can help you to tap into that compassionate side of yourself, even on days, or maybe in particular on days when you're not feeling that compassionate. It's been a tough day, you're tired. Just saying that, offer these minutes to somebody can just be a reminder to yourself to bring you back to what's important.
Mm. That's that's very powerful, Thane. That's very powerful. That in the very essence of trying to be present, you're dedicating that time and space. You're dedicating the merits of your session to alleviate suffering, to help somebody along, somebody that might be struggling, or somebody equally that you might have a little bit of enmity with, or you might be not getting on with, and again, that's quite powerful,
Yeah,
quite powerful.
yeah.
I read in your book, and the Buddhist CEO, and it's a wonderful book. I'm just going to show it to people. I think if you've not got this book already, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, go out and buy it today, because it's a beautifully written book, beautifully written, powerful sentiments within the pages of this book, and powerful inspiration for anybody who wants to consider how to bring their own spiritual practice into line with where they find themselves in the world. And let's say that it's not necessarily Buddhist, but I think there can be, this model can be used in terms of a wider, more general example of how we might, as human beings, just try to be a little bit more compassionate, try to be a little bit more aware, and try to be a little bit more, uh, I suppose, present to what's going on around us. And I think your book, Thane, you know, particularly has a number of various elements to it. You know, it deals with the challenges that Hamish had at the very beginning of his career, particularly as he assumed the role of CEO. How individuals within the organization, the RCC that he was working with, sought to undermine or challenge or you know, his authority, and that became a real struggle for him. And again, you know, quite clearly within the book, you know, Hamish dedicated his life of practice, and sometimes he must have sat in those sessions, and it must have been a real struggle, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the Buddhist CEO, it's just for listeners that haven't read it, you know, it's quite a gritty book in many ways.
Yeah.
It's hopefully a book with a lot of hope in it too, but the Buddhist CEO, the main character in the book, Hamish, he doesn't have an easy ride. He has,
Mm.
you know, he takes on a very tough job and he does manage to turn it around, but people don't always come with him. A lot of people do, but a lot of people don't. And yeah, dealing with those difficult situations really ultimately kind of wear him down eventually. But yeah, it just seems to be such a common theme amongst senior leaders in many ways that
Mm.
you go into these very senior posts with great intentions, good intention, make changes, but it just seems to be people rubbing up against people seems to be one of the almost the universal themes actually of this modern working life. And yeah, it's a difficult one to deal with for people. It's very difficult.
It is, and you know, people have this image, no doubt, of CEOs, you know, being at the very top of the organization, having all this wonderful experience, having all this power, you know, and all this control to drive the direction of an organization in the way that I presume a CEO wants to. But your book quite candidly recognizes that right at the very top of the organization, one of the most loneliest individuals that can exist in the organization is in fact the CEO, him or herself, who are at the very top of the organization at times because of these struggles,
Yeah.
because of these challenges, find themselves very isolated and very alone. And I suppose in your work as a CEO, how do you support CEOs locally to break that isolation and break that uh, 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 you know, barrier that they sometimes will, for no, you know, for no reason other than that they are CEO, find themselves in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an interesting point that I met a lot of CEOs and every single one of them was kind of inspirational in their own way. They all
Hmm.
really were motivated, really wanted to make a difference. I see so many people can say, oh, the boss doesn't care, or I mean, yeah, I got under the bonnets of a lot of these people. I really felt that they were really wanting to make a difference. They really were there for the right reasons. I met very few CEOs or senior managers who didn't come from that place.
Hmm.
However, they were perceived by their workforce. I really believe that the vast majority of the people I met were, you know, really wanting to make a difference. But I did suspect that many of the people I met and some of the people I got to know well, and although I admired them deeply, all struggled at some level with their health, whether they noticed it or not. And I'm
Hmm.
not saying, I mean, just some element of looking a bit unwell, or whether they'd put on a little bit of weight, or you know, a bit of stress and anxiety. They weren't sleeping well. Some people, you know, possibly even had to, you know, seek medical attention that nobody would have known about. But behind the scenes, I think the pressure of that job can get to people. And I think it may be quite unusual if it doesn't get to you in some level, actually.
Hmm.
But in the book, it's interesting that Hamish, the main character, he actually, the way he solves it is that he feels he can't, and I guess it's common in CEOs and maybe a lot of senior managers, he feels he can't go into work and say, I'm struggling today, because he, in the book, feels that he is I suppose, the centerpiece of the company. He's trying to show people the way and encourage people. He wants to be positive. He wants to be careful how he uses language and inspire people. He goes in, not anything other than that. He feels he's maybe not living up to that role that he felt. But he reaches out in the book to other CEOs in similar types of companies. It tends to be large charities in the book. And he finds that other CEOs also feel quite similar. Once he's got to know, and set up a group called in the book the Fellowship of the CEOs, and they get together. There's about 10 of them or so, and they take turns at hosting a meeting, and they share in a professional way. They share their the tensions that they're experiencing, and he finds quite a lot of solace in that. And yeah, I do wonder if that's a way, there's some sort of way of setting these kind of, I don't know, fellowships of the CEOs. That was what I called it in the book. But I certainly found quite a lot of in my own career as well when I was working as a CEO. Probably some of the greatest support I had was also from other CEOs who you felt you could talk to. They understood what you were going through, and they almost universally felt they couldn't speak to their kind of team about it because they were trying to support them and try to be the kind of a model or try to lead in the way in an inspirational way. They didn't want to seem to be. I don't know. I use the word weak. They just wanted to keep that positive image up to keep everybody else positive. But I think it is lonely, and I think when people talk about workforce and looking after your workforce, which hopefully Hamish does in the book, and hopefully I did as well. We should try and measure the workplace culture. We should try and that's some work that you're involved in, obviously, Seamus. But it's quite often the health of the CEO or the senior management team is often the last that people kind of remember. And I do think there's something in that we forget about the leaders. And some people might say, "Oh well, they chose that position." It's true, but I do think looking after the leaders is something that we should think about too.
Absolutely, and I think you're absolutely right because we're all great as leaders, leading people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But who leads us, right?
Yeah.
Where does our steer and our direction came from? And Hamish in the book, had his own struggles, not only with his own staff team on one side, but also with his board on another, who, at times were very pedantic about particular elements and details about contingency budgets and didn't see the whole principle behind it. And that led Hamish to become very frustrated, with the level of on offer. I suppose CEOs do find themselves between rock and hard places, right? They're trying to keep their staff team happy and supported and lead them, but they're also trying to keep, the power makers, as it were, and the power creators and the board, happy, board members across the land happy in terms of explaining why key decisions are made, having to go back over ground. And it must be for CEOs, quite frustrating sometimes to I was going to say be held back, but I don't mind it from that. I don't really mean that, but to be constantly challenged in terms of the reasons why decisions are made, and how decisions are come to, and so on and so forth. And I suppose it's that constant battle for that equilibrium between those two parties, right? And the CEO finds himself, and the leadership find themselves in the middle of that siege, which is constantly swirling and constantly turning and constantly changing. And I suppose in your own experience, then as a CEO, have you experienced both of those sides, both the challenges from staff sometimes, but also the challenges from supportive board members who may challenge or have challenged some of your decisions sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was a CEO, I had a supportive board, supportive chairman, and yeah, there can be tensions there. I know some people can have boards that they really just don't get on with, or the chairman, that must be terrible. Thankfully, we kept a very good relationship, and we really worked at that. We discussed that about how we should bring things up if there's tensions and that. But tensions do arise, and yeah, I think it's almost impossible for them not to be. The CEO is the one in between the company and the board, so trying to take forward the board's vision, as well as bring it to the company and report back on how that's going. And yeah, there was often things that would arise, and I think when you feel really stressed and very pressured, some things can maybe get to you more than they have to. In reflection, you think, was maybe a comment wasn't that bad, but when you were really stressed out with something, it maybe hit you more than maybe they should have done. Yeah, get that balance is very difficult. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there is that struggle, and Hamish, the character, quite eloquently describes that difficulty that he has, when the time comes to do go away and do go on retreat, and does go away to Trussell Hole, and spends time in quiet prayer and meditation and contemplation. Surrounded, I've never been to Trussell Hole, but the description of the book. It's a beautiful area with rolling hills, and the monasteries set right into a beautiful part of that country. But there always comes time for a retreat to end. And I did notice in the book it was getting harder and harder and harder and harder. Almost, Hamish would tie his laces very slowly and pack his bag extremely slowly, and walk, get some breakfast very slowly. And I know that's been present, I recognize that, but there was also a sense that he didn't really want to leave. And he struggled with the act of leaving the monastery. And it reminded me, Thane, of in ancient mysticism, there was there is that story of how those who journey in the spirit need both the marketplace and the desert. The marketplace sustains us and gives us shelter, puts food on the table, and provides for our daily needs. But there's also a time in spiritual journey where we need the desert, and the desert provides that space where we get nourished spiritually, and we become nourished internally, and we build our solid foundation in spiritual practice, or rebuild it in some cases, as Hamish did, because sometimes he went to a monastery and was really exhausted and tired and just needing that space. And do you find in terms of your practice, trying to live a Buddhist life, trying to be truly present, do you find that the modern workplace and the modern society today, is that becoming more difficult because we live in a 24-hour, 365 day a year information overloaded society? Do we need as people to maybe consider switching off or going away from that? Or do we need a monastery? Do we need a monastery then?
Well, pick up on a few of your points there that certainly I'm guessing many people listening to this will never visit a monastery. And I think there are multiple from different faiths across the UK you can visit. I've just kind of found Throttle Hole, and it's my place and I like going to, but I'm sure that they all offer similar things. But I think there is something in this, certainly for me, that as an antidote to the modern world, I find spending time in a monastery extremely helpful.
Yeah.
And some people might think that is strange. But in the book, I say this, that I find the monastery to be one of the most, or not the most normal place I've ever been to. What do I mean by that? That I think that what I've learned, I mean, from the monastery is that there's no TV, there's no phone signal, and so that's gone whether you like it or not. It's just not happening. It's a very structured day, actually. You go on a retreat, it's slightly more structured, but even when I was living there for 6 weeks this year, just falling in with the kind of monk's daily routine, you're up at usually 5:45 in the morning, quite early, lights out at 10 at night. There's no choice, lights out sort of thing. And it's quite a busy day. You're working or meditating. There's very few even. There is bits of time for spare time, but generally speaking, you're quite busy, involved in helping out the monasteries running, I suppose. If you're not doing that, you're meditating. But there's all these, interest in well-being, all these books, and all these different ways we can do things. But to me, there's nothing like, and only really a monastery has really offered me that. It's just this, whether you're going for a week or a weekend, it's just very different. The monks are very friendly. They are not overly friendly. They're not like hugging you and hello, high five. It's just a moderate welcome, but you feel welcome. The place is heated. It's nice, but it's not over the top either. It's certainly not Spartan, but it's kind of somewhere in the middle. You get 3 really nice meals a day, incredibly nice vegetarian meals a day. Kind of choose how much you want to eat. You won't starve. There's no snacks in between. Just it's set in this beautiful place. Now, just to me, it's just something about allowing your mind to be away from everything, really. Yes, you're structured, but when we work in the monasteries, you might be working in the kitchen or you might be in the garden. Like I was saying with the meditation, we just try and be present to it. The monks might explain what you're doing, but you try and do it quietly after that. It's not rigid. If you speak, the monk doesn't give you trouble. We try and be as quiet as we can as we're doing it. Just over a week, I think Hamish says that in the book that, particularly when I was working as a CEO, the first 2 or 3 days, my mind was so busy. Yeah. After 3 or 4 days, I said, maybe I won't go silent, but I could feel it quieting down and just stress sort of leaving my body in many ways. And yeah, when I was working as a CEO, although I didn't hate my job, I could tell that by the time I wanted to leave the monastery, I was a bit reluctant to go. Not quite so much that case now, but when I was there for 6 weeks, I felt it was just time to go. At the end of it, I kind of had a good feel of it. But there is something about this just being quiet and silent. It's very hard to get anywhere. Even if you go to a quiet cottage somewhere on your holiday, chances are it'll be a TV, you'll get caught up in this sort of stuff. And I also found there was something really nice in having the structured week, because as a CEO or a leader, a manager, you're often thinking about what's to happen next. It just felt like a liberation amongst the right thing. I want you to sweep the floor now. Off I went, and half an hour time you're meditating, and 2 hours after that you're having your lunch. And just something that structured day took away a lot of pressure for me too. Just I wasn't thinking about what was happening next. I was just following the sort of rhythms of the monastery, I suppose. And I found it very beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose we can all create that moment of quietness, though. And for me, my heart on a Thursday night always flows to the little meditation group in Haven and Stonehaven. It always goes there. It's 7:30 every Thursday night.
That's nice.
And I've had the privilege of being part of that group. And your chief executive says I'm the furthest away member of the group at the moment, I believe, and I still hold that record. But what I like about that and what resonates with me is that it may not be a monastic experience, but you do get a couple of hours of just peace and really, it's somewhere really to rest your head, right?
Absolutely. I think you mentioned there about the desert and the old mystics going to the desert, and it's good to go on a retreat occasionally. But certainly the monks, they often say, don't come to the monastery to train, and don't leave having trained, as in Buddhist training, Buddhist practice. Come already training, leave continuing your training.
Yeah.
And certainly the Soto Zen view or the Buddhist view is that, as I said before, it's not enlightenment or an enlightened life isn't to be found in the future, the past. It's right here. Thursday night at the monastery, or Thursday night at the Haven, or wherever you are at work. It's really that thing in ourselves that we touch in a monastery doesn't go when it's there all the time. It's just wiping away the clouds of our mind, trying to be present to it. So you're right. I think going on a retreat boosts us a little bit and gives us a bit of a boost, recharges a little bit, depends. But it's there all the time. We can tap into it all the time. Certainly, it's why we talk about practice time, almost like practice it every day. Try and bring it into your life every day. You get the most from it, but it's always there. Even when you don't think it is, that peacefulness can be tapped into. And in Buddhism, we talk about the three jewels of Buddhism: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha being a sort of historical Buddha who lived, thanking him for his life. The Dharma, the huge range of teachings are out there, and the Sangha, which is the community. And so on Thursday night, we have a small Sangha come together in the Haven, and Seamus joins us. But there's something about that. You're right. It's almost like creating a mini monastery. We don't know each other necessarily greatly well. We know each other well.
Yeah.
People come together. All the people come there that night. Just choose to give up that 1.5, 2 hours for that evening. There's something about that. And there's a real feeling of Sangha for me that we're just people who are trying to live a similar life, trying to be mindful, trying to be present to our lives. And that recharges you in a way, just coming together with like-minded people to sit together in silence, meditate, and we'll do chat and have a cup of tea after and talk about some aspect of Buddhism. But there's something that's quite special.
Yeah.
There's no money exchanges hands.
I was just about to say it's a free practice, right? It's no cost, and it's readily available to anybody who is in that area. Every Thursday night, 7:30, and it runs. There is a donation, right? You can make to cover the cost of tea and biscuits, and the service charge. But other than that, it's a wonderful opportunity, I think, for people to engage in Buddhist practice.
It's one of the things that amazes me the most about Throstle Hole, actually. We're an affiliated group to them, and Throstle Hole, believe it or not, people can look it up if they want to. Throstle Hole, THROSSEL, separate word, hole. They actually run on that basis. They have a recommended charge for, so like you do an introductory weekend first.
Yeah.
Then once you've done that, you can pretty much go when you want. There's organized weeks, or you can stay just any time as well. They do shut for 3 weeks a year. I think the monks have their own retreat. But if you go there genuinely and didn't pay any money, no monk would come looking for you. It's just you'll be invited back. So they do say, well, we've been here for 50 years, and if nobody puts any money in the tent, we're going to collapse very quickly. So they're honest about that. But they do say have a recommended price. They don't stand and take your payment at the end. You can make it when you go home via bank transfer. You can put money in a slip or a check and put it in this box. Nobody checks. Nobody comes back to what you've paid. I just think it's a lovely way. And they've survived for 50 years. And it's the only place I've ever come across that runs like that. So if somebody generally is a bit hard up, they can go to Throstle Hole and they can join in with what's happening there. Nobody will even mention money to them. It's incredible how it works. So and obviously people who find themselves maybe in a position where they've got a bit more money might put a little bit more in. So, but it works, and it's just nice to be in part of something. The Thursday night group that we feel the Dharma, the Buddhist teachings are free. So we'll have a tin and people can put money in, but we don't check who's putting the money in or keep a record of it. It's actually quite near the back of the room, and people do it. And having the watch who's putting the money in, and somehow we'll keep it going. So it seems to work.
Fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And your book, Thane, is a testimony to in some sense, and reflects you really well in some aspects of your own life, but also brings in very simplified form the practice of Buddhism, the Soto Zen practice of Buddhism that you describe quite eloquently, both in terms of your own life, but also is clearly recorded here within the pages of this book. This is Wellbeing with Seamus. This is the final episode in series 1. What would you say to people about how they could improve their well-being using meditative practice as a means to well-being improvement. But how would you sell it?
Well, the first thing I would say is I'm not trying to make anybody a Buddhist, and I see Buddhism as equal to other religions. In our Thursday night group with a lady who was quite a deeply practicing Muslim a few weeks ago, and she enjoyed our night. And a lot of the monks have certainly said to me that if somebody comes to Throstle Hall and they've been a Christian or whatever other religion for 30 years, they sometimes try and convince them not to change to becoming a Buddhist. They say, why give up? You practice that for so long, just keep going with it. So don't come from that point of view. I do believe that meditation and mindfulness practice can make a difference in anybody's life. It'll make you a better atheist, it'll make you a better Buddhist, it'll make you a better Christian or a Hindu, whatever it is. But certainly, the monks I've spoken to have inspired me, have said, try and do something every day. Don't meditate for 2 hours every 4 weeks. Better to do a minute a day than 2 hours every 4 weeks, I think. So if you can, pick up a meditation technique. They're out there, and the Throstle Hall website's got some great introductory videos. Or find what suits you best. If you can, get up in the morning and meditate. I like to do half an hour, but even if you start with 10 minutes or even 5 minutes, it's just breaking that chain. I mean, dreaming all night, start with your meditation. And then I would say eat moderately, and just try and look after yourself, your well-being. Never look for perfection. It's impossible. Just eat 3 or 4 meals, decent meals a day, look after yourself. Try and walk in nature if you can, even if you're in a big city, walk in the park, look at the sky, listen to the birds, just be present to your life. Even if you've got a busy day ahead of you, try and practice mindfulness when you're going to work or moving into your day. Just be present to your life. So if you're washing dishes, you're walking down the street, try and just wash dishes and walk down the street. You're aware of your hand in the plate when you're washing them. You're aware of your feet in the ground. Your mind wanders, bring it back to just being present. And if you can meditate maybe at night again, or 10, 15 minutes at night, moderate your phone, I would say. I am somebody who's got a phone. I wonder if it's the best or the worst thing ever happened to me. But I do think we can get caught up in that. Just try and give your time a bit of silence. Some inspirational reading. I found some of the Zen poets. There's a guy called Ryokan, who's very famous in Japan. He's got a book called One Robe, One Bowl. You get it on Amazon for probably under a tenner. Just got these small inspirational poems. Some of them are in the book, actually. And just something that inspires you. Just having a little read of it and try and go to bed. Just go to bed and sleep rather than just, try and put down the phone for an hour before you go to bed. But the more and more we can be present to the moment, I think the more we can enhance our well-being.
Wow. What a way to finish. Thane Lawrie. What a way to finish. No words are needed beyond that. Thane, it's been a pleasure to have you on today, and thank you for your time. Thane, where can people find your book? Where is it available from?
It's available on most of the online sellers, Amazon probably being the most easiest one to get it from. So Thane Lawrie, the Buddhist CEO.
And you have your own website as well, correct?
I do, thanelawrie.com. I'm on Twitter, now X, as the Buddhist CEO. On Facebook and Instagram as Thane Lawrie as well. But thanelawrie.com. And you can get links to buy the book there from a few sites, actually, Amazon being one of them. But if you want to go on there, you can choose a link that suits you best. And it is available globally, so people are listening in other countries, should be able to get it on Amazon or other sites anywhere in the world, really. So
wonderful. And finally, is there going to be a follow-up?
I've worked on a follow-up. Yeah, I've always thought it's 2 books, so hopefully one day there'll be a follow-up. I've written about 75% of the second book. So, and at the moment, it's got a working title of. Although I'm still not certain of this, but I'm working the title. The Sutra of the Forgotten CEO is the working title. So
I like that. I like, as a fellow author myself, you'll be aware I've recently published.
Yes, well, congratulations on that.
Thank you, and it's a wonderful experience. My own book, The Gospel According to Seamus, will come out next year.
Look forward to it.
So, well, if it's half as good if it's half as good as the Buddhist CEO is, I'll be an amazing company. And I stand on the shoulder of giants this afternoon.
Very kind of you. Look, I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you very much for having me on. Deeply appreciate that and your kind words about the book. Thank you so much.
No worries. And Thane, thank you. And I wish you well, both with what you're doing at the moment, where you are in life, and going forward, your future plans, and you take care, Thane.
Thank you very much, Seamus.